arrow that points up?
Well, that's my problem. I don't.
If you put your mouse on the bottom, it should pop up.
Ah, there we go. Okay. Sharing is not turned on.
Oh, well, let's see. Oh, wow. Now you should be able to share.
Okay. Oh, technology. Don't we love it?
I'm getting better at it.
Okay, content only, share.
There we go.
There's my Zoom workplace. Yeah. I'm screen sharing. Thanks so much, Zoom. Hi, Sherry. How are you? Or Megan.
I'm good.
Sherry. Okay.
It's okay. Sherry's teaching right now.
Yes, she's in the thick of it. Okay, let's see if I can get that dialog box to go away.
I'm kind of in the thick of it too. I'm in my school nurse office today, but
Okay.
I don't have it as bad because I'm not in public school. But I still have it, but not like Sherry does.
Yeah, well, we'll be mindful of your time. So thank you. We think that we have information that will be of interest to you in your capacity as a member of the K-12 Education Budget Committee, right?
Okay.
So every year when the session starts, pretty much like clockwork, at least the major districts in our area will come to the committee and say that special education is underfunded.
Mm-hmm.
And the legislature needs to step up and pump more money into SPED, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
We also know that while state money is the bulk of the funding for special education, it's not the only funding.
Correct.
And what we're going to focus on today is money that comes in under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which I'll call IDEA, because they've given me a handy acronym to use, so I'm going to use it. So our contention today is that IDEA has been used as a slush fund, at least by these major districts, as a way to fund their leftist pet projects. And I think we can prove that. And with that money, there is little accountability and even less transparency. So that's where we're going here. So let me see if I can get this launched. There we go. Okay, so we're focusing on Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley and how IDEA became DEI. And the proof really arises in the year 2020. But the fact that this is 5 years in the past doesn't mean that the structural issues have gone away. It's every bit as ripe for abuse today as it was back then. We just happen to have the proof for what happened back then. So the overarching question is anyone minding the store when it comes to the use of this money? Our contention is not really in Kansas because of a lack of transparency and accountability. So here's what we're talking about. Title 6B money under IDEA. And I spoke with the Blue Valley administrator last week who very clearly said these monies are sent to school districts to offset some of the excess costs of providing services to students with disabilities. So overall, that's the purpose of the IDEA program, right?
Megan, I can send you these slides when she's done.
Perfect.
If you want to
I'm just
get
going to take notes too. That's why I'm leaning down.
Yeah, and I have citations for everything as well. So of interest to us today is the fact that local education agencies can use this 6B money for what's called early intervention services. And these services come in two forms. There's CEIS, which is voluntary, CCEIS, which becomes involuntary under certain circumstances that we will get to. So, of course, money brings with it spreadsheets, and KSDE puts on its website, these spreadsheets that let you know, sorry, I've got my little box in the way here. That lets you know how much money a district could potentially use for these early intervening services. And it's a 15% figure. So you see here in the year 2020, Blue Valley had 505,000 available. Shawnee Mission had 916,000 available to it. That's just the bucket that they could pull from in that year, in the event they wanted to do voluntary services or had to do a response that was involuntary. Okay. Come on, man. Oh, please don't tell me you're not going to advance. Come on, slides. You can do it.
If you want, send me your slide deck and I'll see if I can do it.
This is pretty much what happened to me when I was dealing with Erica. There we go. Okay. So just a quick reference guide. Here's where the shenanigans come in. Okay. The use of this money is governed by federal regulation, as everything is when you're dealing with the federal government. And for these coordinated early intervening services, the services can include professional development, right? That's where the mischief is made. As I said, the services can be voluntary or mandatory. Okay, so we're going to have a look at what happened in Blue Valley, and as best I can determine, their use of this CEIS money under IDEA in 2020 was voluntary. I have seen nothing in the record that said they were compelled to use this money. Now, look who we have. It's our friend Ian Andre Roberts, who is currently in federal lockup in Des Moines.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're up on all the problems he's had and the federal charges he's facing. The fact that he was, arrested in Des Moines. He had served in Mill Creek Township outside Erie, Pennsylvania before that. Before that, he was in California. So he's had quite the career here in the United States. And I have to admit that watching his trajectory has been a bit for me like watching a car wreck on the side of the highway. It's like I can't pull my eyes away. Particularly since, Kansas is currently engaged in a search for a new superintendent. So I've been curious about what firms helped out along the way as he made his way across the country. Why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant because last weekend I was looking at the headlines and I came across an article that referenced the fact that he worked in tandem around the country with an education consultant, a gal named Nicole Price, whose consultancy is called Lively Paradox. And according to the AP and PJ Media, the thing they had going was as he would move around the country from district to district, she would follow in his wake and get consulting jobs, right? Why is this of interest? Well, I went, surely not that Lively Paradox. Oh, indeed. Gotta move my little box again. Please pay special attention to the lovely gal in the front row on the right-hand side. That is Nicole Price, founder and sole proprietor of Lively Paradox, who was named a 2019 Friend of Education by the Blue Valley Board of Education, right? Hang on. Oh my gosh, what is it with these controls?
One of my favorite things in life officially, Megan, has become watching your face. Do you want to email it to me and I'll try to open it and see if I can do it from this end?
Okay, so secret, my husband, like if he's not busy and I'm on committee and he listens to my committees, he'll text me like, you have too much RBF on your face. Don't,
it's just the right amount.
Oh my gosh.
Shoot it to me
so
in an
who are
email.
the rest of these people?
So this gal here, that is, I believe, Michelle Benjamin. She's a member of the Board of Ed back in 2019. That's the superintendent, Todd White. This is another recipient, I think they had 3 or 4 so-called Friends of Education. that
So
year.
she's just already been involved with all of these people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Denise, I'm so sorry.
No, it's
Megan.
okay. Email it to me and I'll pull it up on my end. The other
Yeah.
thing, Megan, is those two were
If you
co-authoring.
exit out and just go back to your PowerPoint, you don't have to expand it. Just
Okay.
hit the
That might
exit
help.
key
There we go.
there, and then just touch on the slide you want over on the.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Much easier. Okay.
They were co-authoring books together, she and he.
Well, just chill. Hang on
Sorry.
a minute. We'll get there.
Okay.
So, what did she do for Blue Valley to become a friend of education, right? She provided transformational training to develop a culture of inclusion and acceptance and engage in important conversations. Okay, so that gives you the tenor of her work for Blue Valley. This is her self-published book, Lively Paradox, where she touts something called the implicit association test that was created by Harvard. I don't know if you've heard of it before. It's designed to supposedly dig up your unconscious biases, right? She's a super fan of the Harvard IAT. And this matters, not just in sort of a, isn't that ridiculous way, but because she started unconscious bias training for all administrators, Board of Education members, faculty members, starting in late 2018 in Blue Valley, okay? And then she brought in Ian Roberts to join her in the training in Blue Valley, 4 occasions between May 19 and January of 20. I can't find how they were paid, but you can bet your bottom dollar, to coin a phrase, they weren't working for free, right? But I don't know yet how they were paid. Here is why it matters to our conversation today. In March of 20, Blue Valley approved the use of IDEA money, this voluntary CEIS, to have Nicole Price and Ian Roberts provide culturally responsive coaching to educators in Blue Valley. Okay, so they dipped into the special education money in order to have these two provide their culturally responsive unconscious bias training, right? Here's the purchase order, where Blue Valley said it supposedly came out of a diversity consulting fund that I don't believe actually exists. Maybe they stood one up briefly back in 2020, but when I talked to the administrator this past week, he said, no, there's no diversity consulting fund. So I don't know if they were obfuscating their use of the CEIS money. I don't know what's going on here. But nevertheless, the agenda item for the Board of Education said it was coming out of Title 6B CEIS funds, right? So
All building.
I'm going to go back here. That training was supposed to take place between March and June of 2020. It didn't actually take place until July of 2020. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he was hired by the Mill Creek Township District in Pennsylvania as of June 29 of 2020.
COVID also.
Well, that was also COVID. So
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell.
yeah.
But, yeah.
All they would have to say is COVID delayed the training, and nobody would bat
No.
an eye at that.
Correct. That's correct. So here's what makes this even more egregious. So with regard to how districts are supposed to use their Part B CEIS money, it is supposed to be to deliver scientifically based academic and behavioral interventions. Now, presumably any professional development that would go along with that would have to itself be grounded in something that would at least lead to scientifically based academic and behavioral interventions. However, this implicit association test does not have any such foundation. So the first screenshot here is from an excellent article in City Journal by Heather McDonald. It dates from 2017, but she runs through all the critiques of the IAT. More recently, I found a published article by a scholar up at the University of Toronto, where again, he confirms that the IAT is used without psychometric evidence of construct or predictive validity. So what they were using this money for was, in my view, political, and in no way an appropriate use of federal special education money. So the question becomes, who is minding the store when it comes to this use of money? Voluntary CEIS expenditures in Kansas, I was told, are an entirely local decision. KSDE does not demand details. They don't require an approval process. That resides entirely at the district level. That's what I was told by an administrator within the SPED area. So that's one type of early intervention service idea money use. Now we move to Shawnee Mission and their use of comprehensive CEIS, which falls into the mandatory bucket. And we'll look at that in just a moment. So their story really starts back in 2019, which was a big year for Shawnee Mission. Of interest here is that Heather Owsley, who is a Shawnee Mission board member, also the wife of your colleague Jared Owsley, right? She went to Washington to attend a conference on how to lobby to get more idea money, because, you know, the claim is made not just with the state funds, but with the federal funds, that they're not fully funded, right? So with that as a backdrop, a couple of months later, the district entered into a professional development contract with Corwin Publishing for their Deep Equity program. And it was presented to the Board of Education as something that conformed to the strategic plan, but was not meant to address any problems necessarily within the district. You can see the quote here. This doesn't appear as a program or a fix for any kind of problem that we have in our district, but it's a part of our beliefs and how we build on them to be very successful. So that's the justification they used.
And they really paid $135.5 thousand?
Oh, that's just the first
That's just
day.
the beginning. That's just the start.
It
Okay.
gets so much worse.
Before that, they had paid, I believe it was $4,800 to register the district for the program. Then there's this contract price that the district paid. But wait, as they say, there's more.
Linda Seek
So-
is the NEA president.
Yeah, so let me just bounce back here. So John McKinney, who presented this, is a district administrator, student and family services, Denise? am I
Yes, and
correct?
he's also on that statewide group that Kent Reed runs of mental health professionals and how they're going to. Yeah.
Right. And Linda Seek is the Shawnee Mission NEA rep, or at least she was at this time. And you can see here when they talk about the strategic plan that was eventually approved later that year, they have a strategy to relentlessly create a fully unified, equitable, and inclusive culture. And their first action step in doing that is the implementation of deep equity training for everyone, for all staff, ongoing professional development centering around inclusion and diversity. Okay, so we need to ask ourselves, what is deep equity? Deep Equity is a professional development program based upon this book written by Gary Howard called We Can't Lead Where We Won't Go. And I'm just going to give you a flavor for what's in Deep Equity. In my view, it's Marxism. It's got the most racist things I've ever seen in something that was brought into a school. But we'll get there. So here's one of the handouts called From Social Dominance to Social Justice. That gives you a flavor of that. So it contrasts the social dominance paradigm. I just want to point out here, haves and have-nots. And you look at the social justice paradigm, which is distributive justice. If you look up distributive justice, I mean, that's straight up Marxism. But wait, there is more. Here's another handout. Yes.
It's spiritual.
Yes. Yes. So I don't know if you knew.
Way.
This is about consciousness.
Yeah. So this is the professional development that was being given to all educators within Shawnee Mission, right? So they're told about white identity orientations. You're supposed to move from judgmental to anti-racist, if you can see the progression in there. And then with the next handout, you're supposed to engage one another in race and whiteness conversation, right? So how can we interface effectively with people in the different white identity orientations, to support their growth? Yes, they actually paid for this.
And there's also a program for the kids that's part of
Well,
Feedback
we're
Way.
getting there.
Sorry.
Don't.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars they've paid for this. Okay.
So they engaged, they entered into the contract in April, they presented it to the board. By September, they had already run more than 220 of their educators through it. Again, linked to the strategic plan. And that's an important point. Because we don't know when this was issued, but at some point in 2019, 2020, and we obtained this via a CORA request, okay, so an Open Records Act request, and it came to us undated, which is very odd. But at some point in that time frame, KSDE notified Shawnee Mission that under the IDEA regulations, they had what was called significant disproportionality. What that means is they had significant disproportionality based on race and ethnicity with respect to the identification, placement, and or disciplinary removal of children with disabilities. The category in which Shawnee Mission was in violation was in the disciplinary removal of students identified as Black or African American. If you have that significant disproportionality over the course of 3 school years, and as you can see here, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, then you are required to take some of that IDEA money and engage in remediation of some kind. Now, just to sort of clarify the time gap, okay, we'll see here that these regulations, the mandatory provision of CEIS called Comprehensive CEIS, is based on regulations that were revised in 2016 under the Obama administration called Equity and IDEA. Okay, that's what they called the regulations. But when it rolled over into the Trump administration, there was a delay in the implementation. So Betsy DeVos's department looked at that and said there are problems with these regulations. A lawsuit followed. Bottom line is they didn't come into full effect until, I believe it's spring of 2019. So when you see the gap, And okay, they have SIGDIS back here, but why are we talking about 2020? It's because there was that delay in implementation of the regulations. Okay. So we already saw that significant disproportionality based on race or ethnicity. KSDE also puts out guidance to the districts on what this means. So what happens if an LEA has significant disproportionality? They must reserve 15% of their IDEA Part B allocations for these comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. And the purpose is to address factors contributing to the significant disproportionality. We're looking here at a KSDE document, okay? So they've got to use that money to try to fix the problem. KSDE provided Shawnee Mission with technical assistance to try to identify educational solutions for why they wound up with significant disproportionality. Here's our bucket. We saw this slide before. So they had $916,000 to use for that purpose, okay? So this undated document that we got from Shawnee Mission is called their root cause analysis and their plan for addressing the significant disproportionality. And they say in this document, yes, reserve 15% of their IDEA Part B money. They identify the $916,000 they have available. And then they say, based on our conversations with KSDE, we think deep equity training will address the root causes of our disproportionality. So if you sit with that for a minute, what I at least wind up with is an agreement between KSDE and Shawnee Mission that the best way to address this over-disciplining of Black SPED students is to call the faculty racist. I don't know how else you conceptualize that, but that's my take. I'd be curious to hear what they say about it. But here's why we're talking about this today. So in April of 20, the Board of Education in Shawnee Mission approved the payment out of IDEA money of $148,000 to pay for deep equity training. That's on top of the $4,800 they paid to register and on top of the $139,000 we saw earlier for the contract, okay?
I am in the wrong profession. Apparently, I just need to hate white people and say I'll go talk to people about it.
We've already got a plan.
Yeah. The following year, now, I've been poking around the regulations. If you have to address your significant disproportionality, evidently you have a very long runway for doing so. In excess of 20 months, 24 months. I mean, they give you time to spend out the money to do your remediation. Nevertheless, the following year, June of 2021, they're back before the board asking to spend another $129,000 and change to pay for deep equity out of federal IDEA money, okay? With the kicker that, as Denise said, the program also has a student component called the YES program, Youth Equity Stewardship, that they were going to use this federal special education money to pay for. You can see here, this is a photo that was taken at a YES session where the presenters are asking the students, where do you see your own luxury of ignorance and they define luxury of ignorance as ignoring injustice because it doesn't affect you. That's what they term the luxury of ignorance. And then over here, it's very hard to read here, but it says, where do you see luxury of ignorance in others? This is another photo that was taken at the session. Excuse me. This is just what I believe is a poster that is made up of comments that students might have made during the session, you know, where the facilitators walk around, they get the comments and they write the comments on the big poster. And it's interesting that they peg it from 1787 to the present. Well, 1787 is the year the Constitution was drafted, right? So they're asking students about the state of the nation since the drafting of the Constitution. And as you can see, boy, those kids have a pretty jaundiced view of the United States. So the negatives that they wrote down far, far outstrip the positives, which is unfortunate. And I don't know that that yes session was exactly designed to inculcate a positive attitude in them, put it that way. So, pardon me. Yes, indeed, the Board of Education went ahead and approved all that money to be spent out of Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funds to continue the Deep Equity contract. And it's just a point of interest to know that Deep Equity has resulted in a lawsuit against Shawnee Mission. I mean, not only have they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this program, including money that, you know, they will tell you on the one hand they can't afford because it's coming out of special ed, and special ed is so wildly underfunded. Okay. They are now being sued by a teacher on the grounds that the anti-white racial animus within Deep Equity created a hostile work environment. And her Title VII claims survived the district's motion to dismiss. So that's a viable claim going forward at this point. And, you know, the lawsuit has to play out as all lawsuits do.
When did this get filed?
That was October of 24. So it's relatively recent. And the plaintiff, yeah, I mean, she's an English teacher at what, Shawnee Mission North?
Mm-hmm. And they have since stripped her of all of her honors classes, all of her IP classes, and they're requiring her to teach 9th grade English. And the group of educators that work with her together in ELA, for 2 years, they declined to meet with her without supervision because her presence made them feel unsafe.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite.
I know a teacher who quit
still goes
over
back
this.
every day?
She has to because her attorney says it's best that she stay in the building. But, I mean, she would tell you what she was put through. Josiah would tell you what he was put through. We dug into this program deeply when Zach was running for office because when I saw it, I was mortified and I thought, this is going to blow people's minds. And then we found out how they paid for it. And then I had, as I was door knocking around Shawnee Mission, one of the most recurring themes that I was hearing from people was, my son has always been on an IEP and has gotten disability services, and now we're having to fight tooth and nail, and they're telling us there's not money for it. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. So when I saw this, what they were using the IDEA funding for, and they're talking about these kids being significantly emotionally disturbed as a disability, and that the cure to that is, well, we just need to change the racist teachers. To turn around and blame it on your teachers, when you've got violent kids in the classroom, there's nothing you can do but remove them from the classroom to keep the other kids safe. And now you're being put through this anti-bias, anti-racist training because your racism is the problem here. But if you look at that yes thing that Tamara just showed you, they're basically telling those same kids that we're talking about that all of your problems are the fault of that teacher. And the backdrop is we're in this community, and I'm getting emails from teachers at the elementary school saying our incidents of race-based hatred are off the charts. We really need to get the parents involved. They're forming a DEI committee. We've got the middle school telling us that violence is off the charts. We don't know what's going on. The kids are fighting like crazy. And, you know, to me, I'm like, well, you created this problem. We've got swastikas being painted on our sporting equipment at East, and no one knows what's going on. It must be, you know, all of this racism. I'm like, no, it's because we've been relentlessly talking about it at school and dragging the kids into it.
Yeah. And just to wrap up here, I've only got one more slide. In terms of accountability, so as part of the Cora request, we received this budget document. So here's our $16,000, right? So this is the bucket, the early intervening services bucket. But this is that the only reporting that has to go back to KSDE about how they're spending this money? So aggregate numbers that don't tell you what they're doing with the money, how they're spending it. I am entirely open to being proven wrong and that this is not complete and that there actually is public reporting of which I am unaware.
I could almost lay $100 bill down saying that there's not, because these are the exact same spreadsheets with other things that we get that we ask questions on and they say they don't know because they don't collect that data. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lot of taxpayer dollars. You better find out what it was used on.
Yes. So again, just to circle back to where I started, it's about accountability and transparency, right? You can't have accountability without transparency.
Okay, do we know the numbers? Like, why was Shawnee Mission, like, I've always hated, like, the whole disproportionality thing, but some of that comes truly from the feds. Mm-hmm. So, hold on 1 second, I got a teacher calling again.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am? I can just email Mom, but we don't have any extra shoes in the office. Yeah, well, if she does, we'll just bypass it today, since we don't have anything. Then we can call parents. Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, sorry. Okay, so do we have numbers? Is there like 50%? Like what caused them to get the dean? What's the actual data there?
I think we have those numbers, and there's a formula that's spelled out in the KSDE document where they talk about significant disproportionality. One thing that troubles me is that KSDE reports on all of the various factors under IDEA on its website, with the exception of those that pertain to race. And I believe, gosh, I laid this all out. It's been 6 to 8 months. But they omit like 3 of the factors that they don't publicly report on for each district. So it's like they're holding that information back, and I don't know why. Discipline data that isn't made public.
Yeah, I have no idea either.
So I don't know if this is useful to you as you go forward, because the topic of SPED and SPED funding, it's always huge.
And it's going to be huge again because during the funding formula, they asked KSDE for some ideas, and so then they created this whole teacher, like they just blew this whole thing up, and they came back with these recommendations, and they wanted 500 million more dollars, and they wanted this, and that. Like it was like they had these teachers and administrators from across the state that they came and they wanted all of this stuff, and it's like, well, and they were pretty much trying to demand that the legislature give them that in this new funding formula. And so I just flat out asked KSDE, I was like, well, what are you doing in your own budget to try to make room to give more money for special education? And they weren't doing anything because it wasn't their problem. It was the legislators' problem who appropriate money.
Mhm.
Well, once you get a kid on SPED, you can't ever get them off.
Mhm.
And we're not getting anywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then you're doing these kinds of things.
right.
Oh, this is ridiculous.
And as those
Yeah.
numbers of kids with special education designations rise, that funding will rise and your slush fund will grow for your pet
Oh, yeah.
projects.
Well, but
No,
then
I-
when you ask about their reserves, their cash reserves in their SPED accounts, they always tell you they have to have it because of when they get paid and when they get their money. And then they always say, well, if we get a student in that has a lot of needs in our district, they'll bankrupt us. Well, so that, I mean, that's their reasons that they use for all their cash
Mhm.
reserves, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. So I don't like to ever bring forward a complaint without also trying to at least search for a solution. So I was looking around, Dr. Google, I guess, and I stumbled across the state of Arkansas, which seems to have a fairly transparent and straightforward process for their LEAs to apply for either voluntary or involuntary CEIS. So I'm waiting for an email back from them about what their process is and whether there is any public-facing information about
Because is that money all coming from the feds?
Yeah,
Yeah.
idea money.
Yeah, all of the IDEA money is from them.
Yes. But I mean, if what the administrator here locally told me is true, any district can dip into that 15% bucket and just play with the voluntary CEIS money, as Blue Valley did to bring in, the happy couple, Nicole Price and Ian Roberts, to run unconscious bias training because they felt like it.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, when I first started looking at this program, Zach and I bought it because we had a feeling it was not great. And of course, it wasn't. And it was even worse once we got into the DVDs. But I did some Googling, and in a matter of maybe an hour, I found 2 districts in Arizona where they were having school board meetings where teachers were coming and pleading with them that deep equity was causing massive problems in their district, that we didn't used to have these problems. Now we're having huge problems with parents fighting, teachers fighting, everyone's fighting because of this deep equity program. So my question was, when you decided how you were going to spend this money with the coaching of KSDE and your expertise, and they said that they went out and they saw the program in action, so they actually flew out to Colorado and watched Gary Howard give this program, either you didn't look very hard at the people you were hiring, or you did and you chose to do it anyway. You were like, this is our guy, this is who we want, and this is the curriculum that we want. It was very easy to find 3 schools where parents had organized and made t-shirts over this curriculum. And in 2 of the schools, the board had voted to throw it out in the second year. So now you're giving this man money that it could be bad enough that we have to turn around and kick this guy out in 2 years because it's causing so many problems.
Or defend a lawsuit
Yes.
in federal court 4 years later,
We made some videos about that program. I'll throw them at your inbox if you feel like watching them at your leisure. He is a toxic individual. And one of the issues that Kadrin, the teacher, is raising is this is religious. It's spiritual. You're talking about my consciousness and my identity, and you're pointing me in a better direction versus, that it's, if you look at the curriculum, it's really bad. And so either Linda Seek and John McKinney looked at the curriculum and decided that this was going to solve their problem for these kids, or to me, this whole thing has come down from the top. Since the beginning, this was the plan. You're going to get DEI training of all your employees, and this is how you're going to find the money to do it. With coaching
So
from...
is it still going on?
Well, what they did was, what they loved about Gary Howard was it was the train the trainer model. So remember we talked about facilitation methods and how those national training lab groups work? If you look at Gary Howard's stuff, it's identical. I mean, he read the script, so it was, the first thing you had to do is come up with a group of equity practitioners. You met Stacy Bell. She was one of those, because what Stacy thought was, this is going to be great for handicapped kids. This is all about inclusion. We're going to teach the kids not to leave people out, to include everyone. So she was on board. I want to be an equity practitioner because that's a real problem. And then she found herself in the middle of deep equity going, what is going on here? What's this about? So she became an equity practitioner. But what you're supposed to do is go into each district building and find the people who are the most on board with this work. And they become the trainers, and then you bring them and you train them to be facilitators of the group. Go ahead.
But they're still actually truly using.
They have
those
equity trainers in every building.
They have that.
Mm-hmm.
Are
And
they getting a stipend for that?
I have no idea. They hired Tyrone, the DEI coordinator, and after the first year, they gave him a $20,000 bonus. And he is now working with a consulting firm that Gary Howard and the clowns that work with him are also working at.
One thing I would like to know, and it's only hinted at in that root cause analysis document, was whether or not this IDEA money paid for their DEI coordinator. Because it's at least suggested in that document that, yes, the federal SPED money was used to pay the salary of the DEI coordinator, but it's unclear enough that I can't actually say.
And in the strategic plan, they say we're going to create an equitable environment, and they talk about the deep equity training, and also listed in that is we're going to hire a DEIB coordinator. And these DEIB people, they don't have to have any qualifications. I mean, this guy's resume was completely made up, but he wouldn't have had to make it up. All you have to do is come in, be a black person, and say, I'm going to teach diversity. And no one's going to say, no, you're not. What do you know about diversity? You don't get some kind of certificate.
Circling back to the regulations, right? Aren't we supposed to be scientifically based with whatever remedial programs or projects or educational plans we come up with? Yeah, not so much.
It also said it had to address the root cause analysis specifically. And the root cause analysis wasn't complete when they signed the contracts with Gary Howard. So they already knew what they were going to do.
Yeah, and furthermore, there is no analysis of any root cause in that supposed root cause analysis that was worked out between Shawnee Mission and KSDE. So,
and you don't have a whole copy of that?
We have the entire root cause analysis. It's just undated.
And you just pulled the clips. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, just... I guess all we're trying to say is this has been abused, right, by the very same people who will come to you and pour mouth about how underfunded everything is while they're over here working on their pet progressive political projects using the very same pots of money they're telling you are underfunded.
Because they know no one's going to say
that they get the blue ribbon for being the best schools, and so they need more money. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And, well,
and if you have a lack of transparency, I don't know what they've done since 2020. We just literally stumbled over this. It was like, I heard someone say when I was watching the Shawnee Mission board meeting, oh yeah, that's coming out of federal money. And I went, what? And that's what started us down this. Otherwise, no one would know.
Which gives the locals no cause to dispute it because it's not our money.
Well, it is, but correct.
Well, they don't believe that federal taxes are our money. They're magic and they come from the money tree.
Yes.
The other thing is, if you say a word about it, well, I'm sorry, do you hate handicapped children?
Right. You bet.
It's a nice little skin suit to wear in because it makes you untouchable. If you can just ride in on the back of a handicapped child.
Mm-hmm. And so my offer is, if you want me or us to dig into anything further, you know, we're here to help.
And what
if anything
happens
requires further exploration.
when you have a child that's not getting the services they're supposed to get and their attorney gets a hold of this information?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But now I want to dig into Manhattan 383.
I want to dig into every district in this state because I have a feeling this is a formula that comes from the top and the coaching is taught. This is how you're going to do it.
Look at that if
you can, and here's why. We've had a lot of issues with 383 and they're sped like a lot. So much so that 2 senators and myself have a meeting with them at the end of next week because of the crap that they're pulling. And so if you could get any of that by then, it's the 29th is when we meet with them.
Do you know if they use board docs?
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll figure it out. We'll see what's available.
Yeah, 383 is Manhattan, Ogden, and they're actually kind of under, the board is a lot under fire right now because they had the Katie Allen who made the comments about Charlie Kirk, and she was fired from KSDE, but she won't resign from her board position, so there's currently a petition going around, and so
the search that they are using looks like what Shawnee Mission is updated to, and it is not user friendly. Remember how board docs used to be real simple? They just redid it, and it's become as terrible as this. It makes it really difficult to find things.
Yeah,
but we'll do our best.
For that. Yes, they do it on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. So thanks for your time.
No, thank you. And if you could do the 383 and let me know, and this is mind-boggling. This just pisses me off. Like, I just don't understand why we have. I've been spending most of my day, as I'm supposed to be a school nurse, but going through all of K-State. We finally got all of their syllabi for their education program.
Oh, I'm glad you did that.
Oh, girls.
You won't surprise me. I challenge you, but you won't.
Is this the time to talk about curriculum and teaching 235 at KU? No, we'll save that for another day.
Okay, well, I have KU stuff coming, but I have K-States right now, and it's...
I love it.
Excellent.
If you want somebody to look over that, we can do that as well, because a lot of times there may be names that we recognize from having done this for so long and know who they're connected to that maybe you don't, or authors. Just because this is the world that we unfortunately live in now.
Yeah. Well, I can send you some of that too.
Okay.
That's easy.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll send it to your email. All right. Thank
Look
you
at Manhattan.
So much. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.